what's the mindset of being a chef? Because like in jujitsu, it's pretty obvious. Like, there's discipline, there's humility, there's a lot of like, you get into a move and someone has you in armbar, and it's like, I could have my arm broken in 3 seconds.
Right. So it's not too much different than that. We're kind of leaning away from the old school kind of image of what chefs are. They're angry and they throw things, and they
the Gordon Ramsay
berate you. Yeah. And from what I understand, he's a teddy bear in real life.
Yeah.
I try to have my staff leave their egos at the door and try to stay humble about what they're doing, and really look at it as a craft and not just cooking, because there is that certain amount of skill to it. And I find that cooks are so underappreciated for the hours they put in, the daunting mental
fatigue.
Yeah, the fatigue that comes along with it, and the expectation, or balancing the expectation of being perfect 100% of the time. And when you are on this role of, I've been so good, I've been rocking it out, and that one time that somebody sends a dish back, it can really destroy someone's confidence. And there's a certain amount of ego that can build inside of just being perfect all the time, and then they get overconfident, and things are too like up and down. So I try to keep it on this level that is not like, I still set the bar pretty high, but if they come close to it, or if they don't hit it but still come close to it, I don't tell them how horrible of a person they are, because that's kind of what it feels like when you're in a kitchen with an angry chef, and that angry chef usually comes along with a pretty big ego. So then on top of that, I try to get it. I try to work my budget to be a little bit higher on the pay side, because then they feel like they're appreciated a little bit more, and they're willing to work harder for you when they know that they, being here, they get paid a little bit more than, the restaurant next door. And, they can be proud about that, because, when you manage a staff, you try to give them everything that they need, whether it be tools or experience or education on the craft itself. You get a lot more out of them.
Well, it's a lot of value. You're not just trying to give them another job. You're trying to give them something that they don't feel like they have to go anywhere else to get appreciation, to get the Maslow's like hierarchy of needs.
Exactly. So if they ask me for something and it's doable immediately, like, I will make sure that I kind of set some of what I need to do aside to make sure that they have that, because they see the response to it. They see that I'm willing to be there and understand what they need, and even predict it ahead of time, and so that they can be like, oh, chef, I needed this, but I didn't say anything about it, so this is really cool. And being the guy that's going to work side by side, shoulder to shoulder with them, show them that I'm willing to work harder, as hard, if not harder than they are, to make them feel better about just their environment. And then it creates a really nice culture within the team.
You're not just managing them. You're trying to be the person with them, to be the example that you set for yourself.
Right. And, with any manager, you need to know their jobs better than they do, so that you can predict and, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of
empathize.
Yeah. And it helps to
understand that they're not perfect because X, Y, and Z, and that while there's the responsibility of, we need to get this done, that there's also the cost of education. It takes a while for someone to learn a new thing, learn how you work, learn how your style is.
Right. Yeah.
That would be clarity over agreement, being clear about what your expectations are. And they don't have to agree on it initially, but when you show them that, hey, this is how I treat myself, and this is the results we get from it.
To be that example and be able to in turn influence a lot easier. And having or being able to influence like that is so important without using words, you know?
Did you learn a lot of that from that one chef that you had who was like on par with everything? I think it was at one of the country clubs you worked out.
Oh, like the first chef I ever worked for.
Yeah.
Literally broke down everything I had learned, told me to forget it, and then literally restarted me. Like all the way down to putting 100 pine nuts in a saute pan and having me walk around for like 4 hours just tossing these pine nuts around, not telling me that there was 100 pine nuts in this. And at the end of it, bringing it back to him. Well, first day, there were 3 less than there should have been in there, so we made me do it again the next day. So like it created that muscle memory in being able to toss things around in a pan. And
I keep saying, I say a lot of quotes on this podcast, but I have no idea where they come from. The things that you need to do is in the work that you're avoiding.
yes,
So all the tiny little things, the repetitions, like in jujitsu, doing the same drill over and over and over,
so that it becomes natural.
Yeah.
And the reason being is that, you know, going back to the risotto, you know, you've got that risotto on it and you've done it so many times that you understand the whole process without really breaking down the reasons that you're doing it like that, but you're doing it so naturally that you're able to add tasks on top of it. So like while you're in one hold, you're thinking about all the ways that he's going to try and get out of it and trying to predict how you're going to stop, how he's going to get out of it. So like the hold becomes the natural part of it, and then the thinking ahead becomes
It also
extra.
has to do a lot with like cognitive load, because once you know something intuitively, it becomes subconscious. Like you just know how to do it. So consciously, you don't have to use as many resources to get that done, because it's just a list. Like do this, do this, do this. Like when I set up everything, most of it's passive. At this point, like I just know, get this up, put this on.
Right, understanding where the lights need to be and how much light and how far away the mics. Yeah,
And then I just have to remember, what did I do wrong last time? And then I can fix those tiny little things and not worry about the other stuff that I did right.
right. So I don't know if you've maybe seen like when a chef is like cutting anything, a lot of times they can be looking around while they're kind of cutting because they know where the knife is against their hand and they know where they are on whatever they're cutting. It becomes that natural cycle of repetitiveness.
Are most chefs like that? It doesn't seem like it would be the case that all chefs have like a Gordon Ramsay vibe. That the vast majority are going to have that humility because they love what they do.
Nowadays, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you first started out, not so much.
There was a chef that if we made a mistake, we had to put our knuckles up in the heat lamp and he would flick our knuckles with a spoon. I had one that we worked in this really open kitchen, and you know, if a plate was wrong or if something was taking too long, literally the pass was this countertop, and from where he was looking, behind him was the kitchen, and it had multiple lines. It was like cold side, and then like proteins, like the grill and fish, and then like vegetable was on the other side, and then straight out from him was the dining room, and the counter was basically like hip level, and he would turn around and scream and yell, and it was this whole thing where it almost felt like he was putting on a show, but it was literally his ego just being that loud and outward, and it berated the staff but slightly entertained the dining room, you know, instead of, you know, turning around and coming to somebody and say, hey, why are you behind? What can I do to help you? Let me put this on a plate for you so I can start this plate, or, you know, looking ahead at a couple of tickets and setting, you know, a little bit further ahead.
So it was more about him rather than the craft.
Right, because that spotlight is on a chef like that and commanding that team.
In a way, it's just taking ownership for what you do, your staff, for the title that you're given.
Right.
With the amount of responsibilities that you have, you also know that there's a certain level of maintenance that you have to consistently do, or you're going to lose the quality standard that everyone else expects from you.
Exactly. And it's the age-old saying, you get more with honey than you do with vinegar. And
That's an age-old saying? That's
yeah,
the first time I've ever heard it.
Of
course, I'm not age-old, so
if you're sweeter more than sour, then you'll get more out of people.
there's people who are nice but not kind, and then there's people who are not nice but kind. So like kind of going to honey and vinegar, is it, I know, like I'm not very nice, but I am kind. Like I'll tell you, like if someone has a flat tire on the road, I'll be more than happy to replace it, but I'm going to go through every single possibility of why they got the flat tire to avoid making that same mistake again.
Yes, that's actually really close to how I am. It's keeping this reality while still making sure that you're willing to help the next person.
Is there anything that changed when you started at XCAL over like all the other places that you've been to? Because you did a little bit of, you were at Hilton. Was it Hilton or Marriott?
I've been at a Hilton. I've been at Marriott. I have always found myself leaning in towards a more, I want to say, family-oriented type business. Now, don't get me wrong, the corporate structure to things is really a huge benefit for a business.
Is that just mainly like reliability? That like the same process has happened so many times that they've created a structure that's just consistent?
Yeah, and all of their systems are, tried and true. They know them really well. But I don't like to get lost in a number, So like a company like Marriott, which is one of the best companies to work for out there, they've really got it. They've really got it down. But you can still kind of get lost in the thousands and thousands of employees that they have. You're not in the kitchen as much. You're not, you're not as close to some of your lower level employees, and you kind of lose sight of the individual because you have to focus on so much of a whole.
So it's kind of the difference between going to McDonald's and getting just another burger versus going to a specific company because you like the people that are there.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's the one ChatGPT, or it was like a little reel or something, and they asked ChatGPT to create an image of a $1 pancake and a $10 pancake and a $100 pancake, and you get all these like colors and everything, and it goes to $1 million and $1 billion pancake, and they asked what would be a priceless pancake, and it has a picture of a mother making a pancake in a saucepan with a child next
At
to her.
home in their kitchen.
Yeah.
And it really comes full circle that way.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's like you can get a pancake, you can get all this all this wonderful stuff, and like, hey, you got to eat a pancake in space with Saturn in the background,
like gold flake. And,
yeah.
Yep.
How do you translate that family feel to your customers?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts at your cashier. It's who you put up front. It's your face. Like people are gonna remember that face that they dealt with. And right now I have this cashier, Alex. He remembers people's names, the people that come regularly. He even remembers what they order, and he remembers it effortlessly. So it makes them feel like they're coming to their, it's like Cheers, where everybody knows your name.
So not to like, I hope Alex doesn't see this, not to say anything against him, but how do you make sure that it's not just one person who's the face of the cafe, but rather it's the whole collective group of people?
Definitely by example. When I was training Alex, it was me kind of instilling some of what that is, and really just highlighting some of his personality traits. And then I know when I walk away from there, I know that he's going to also set that example. And then I'd actually just recently promoted him.
I'm so sorry for him.
And he would say the same thing. He would probably say, that was a horrible mistake, but I'll do it. But from there, I'm able to put anybody that I hire next with him, so that that example gets kind of set through, and then I almost can just check in on how that training process is going, instead of having to hover over and kind of be hand in hand with some of these people. So putting the right people in place to kind of set that example for the next people up is huge.
And it's also having the flexibility over the stubbornness. You're flexible about what they do without being like, this is the only way to get it done.
I'm not the type of person that it's my way or get the hell out. I am open to any suggestions from anyone, because they're the ones actually doing the job. So if they come to me and say, hey chef, this really works, but I think I found another way that might make this a lot better. And I'm like, all right, let's roll it. Let's send it through a trial run. And there have been several things that Alex has put together for me that have really kind of changed my perspective on a task, or something that I had set in place. There's been several where those things have ended up on the menu because they've been that good. I'm like, oh, okay, this is really good. So then what I'll do is I'll take that cook through the process of sourcing and costing and balancing out the labor cost into it and how to figure out what to sell it for, so that they start to understand the process of what goes into this stuff. Because sometimes one of your purveyors doesn't have that specific item, so it might have to twist and turn just a little bit by the time it actually gets like listed on the menu. So like it's fun to go through that exercise with some of my staff, and it also helps them to look forward into, okay, maybe I want to try and move up in this. And because just cooking can also get mundane, same menu over and over. So being able to change that up and not only give them some of the creative responsibility, but showing them what it takes to get it there is kind of a fun exercise.
And it's also a lot of companies also promote from within. It's a lot easier to promote someone who's already has experience, knows the culture, knows the expectations, and promote that person and give them more money than try to hire someone and then have to figure out, does this person work for me? Does the personality work long term, or are they just trying to get another job?
Right. And I keep going back to Marriott, but Marriott is one of the biggest examples of that. When I went into working for them, it took me almost 4 years to get in the door, just constantly applying for whatever was out there within Marriott because of, what I had heard of their company. They keep people 20 years at a time. A lot of people retire with them, and they pay really well. Their benefits are really nice. Their schedule is really good. And you'd be surprised how many people don't realize it, but they're an amazing company, and they literally promote from within.
How do you make them profitable then? Because it seems like you have 33% of your entire profit margin from people within the company, or just one department of the company, not even everyone. When
it comes to, and I use this example a lot because I have like some grain bowls or whatever. So like a Chipotle, they go through so much product that they can order in so much bulk that the price gets reduced for them to buy. So cost of goods for them is a little bit less, I guess, per ounce of whatever it is that they're buying. For me, I don't buy quite as much, so my price is a little bit expanded. And I've got some will come to me and say, that's really high price. And well, I don't have as much of the buying power as someone like Chipotle or even McDonald's for that matter.
Yeah. So how do you position Midway as a somewhere where people want to go to?
I wanted to be just a quick service, but still kind of have that feeling of people wanting to come and sit and hang out.
So like a hybrid.
Yeah.
So it's like a fast food, but still quality is one of your core ingredients.
Yeah. And fast food is used so loosely.
Yeah. Fast food as in it's something easy to get.
Yeah. I call it like the faster
food.
You know what I mean? Because it's not quite, pull through a drive-through and less than 3 minutes you're getting your food because of it, constantly being on that cycle. Because our ticket times are somewhere around 5 to 7 minutes, because it's all cooked fresh. It's and it's cooked as fresh as I can get it. Still trying to stay within that certain time frame.
This is not really podcast related, but I was wondering, what kind of oil do you guys use?
So I'm canola.
That's what it tastes like. I hate canola. I taste it every time and I'm like, this is so bland. Olive oil is good, but olive oil doesn't work with everything.
On my flat top, which is, the griddle, it's basically my daily driver. So that's like, I cook chicken breasts on it. I cook burgers on it. There's bacon cooked on it. There's, for breakfast, the eggs are cooked on it. No, on the flat, I use clarified butter. because that's got like,
What's clarified butter?
clarified is like ghee or like drawn butter. Sometimes people know that as. So what it is like you slowly warm up the butter and the milk solids separate from it. So it's almost this like clear, you get this like butter flavor, but then you're basically taking the dairy out and away from it. Creates this really nice kind of smooth flavor. So I don't necessarily use oil on my flat tops. Toasts buns really well. And then, yes, in my fryer, I use canola. It's got the least amount of oil flavor transfer balanced with the price of what that oil is. And I know there's a lot of people that are concerned with like seed oils, and, you know, there's this whole movement of trying to get away from that. But if I put 35 pounds worth of avocado oil in my fryer, it would be
a lot.
The cost would be astronomical. So there's a balance there, and there's peanut allergies. You know, peanut oil used to be like the thing to fry in. If I had my choice, it would be like beef fat, so like beef tallow. So it's not crazy expensive, but the flavor that comes out of it is so good. But then I've got my vegans, my vegans and my vegetarians who are going to be like, well, now I hate you.
What about on the more healthier side of it? Because I know olive oil is supposed to be like a much healthier option, just easier for your body to digest. It's good for like a lot of essential oils,
natural
and stuff.
press process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about like adding olive oil as like an add-on? Like you can say, I want this kind of bowl, but I want olive oil instead of canola. And then you charge a premium for that.
The idea looks good on paper. When it comes to so in a quick service restaurant, things need to be really fast. So like, for example, and I hope this kind of gets into the answer of that. So in the beginning of Midway Café, I had what was a build your own grain bowl, but I didn't do it in the style of like a Cava or a Chipotle where you just walk down the line and you tell them what you want. It was more like printed out on a ticket everything that they wanted in that bowl. So I gave them a couple 3 bases, bunch of vegetables, bunch of proteins. And they would walk up to the register and they'd say, I want this base, I want these vegetables, I want, well, when you have 10 grain bowls on your ticket board, which is basically all of your orders that you have in front of you, the customization of that and looking at one bowl is made this way, one bowl is made this way, one bowl is made this way, and you have, thousands of different combination choices, it starts to get a little muddy when the cooks making them are looking at the tickets, and it's easier to screw up, basically.
So it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Once you get into a process, it's easier to execute that than having something new, and it's like like your progress just has to be stopped so you can add something new. Yeah,
it's just so many different customizations that it's really easy to like miss one. Like we were talking about the mental load from earlier. If you simplify it into, and what I ended up doing, because people were sending stuff back, hey, it's missing this, it's this is wrong, that's wrong, this person grabbed the wrong bowl, it just had,
there's a quality standard behind it.
Exactly. The more you can squeeze things down to a minimal process, the more no consistency is guaranteed, but the consistency is stretched a lot further that way.
Is there anything you would have told yourself when you first started out that would have helped you with the mindset of being a chef?
Appreciate the grind. Appreciate the extent of what it was going to take to learn the craft. Because like when you're young, you're like, I want this now. Sometimes you get overconfident and you're like, I could do this right now. And then somebody hands it to you and you're like, oh, no, I think I'm going to hold off a minute. Just appreciate the grind, and being able to know that you're in it for the craft in the beginning really sends that appreciation further. what it was gonna take, how many hours it was gonna take. You know, because sometimes I look back at it and I'm like, would I do it all again? Would I grind it like I did? Would I spend the 80, 90 hours a week for little to no pay?
That was back when you were in Florida.
Well, that and having that underappreciation for cooks and coming up inside of that, knowing that it was going to take me 20 years would have kind of made me question a little bit of what it is. But then staying in it for that extended period of time really gives you the appreciation for what it takes to get far in the craft.
Do you want to talk about the time in Florida? Just the time when you were working for free for no pay whatsoever?
I had originally wanted to work for Disney, and I went in and worked for free for a day, or it was a couple days, just kind of show what I could do at that time. And he was like, and the chef there was like, yeah, I really want to hire you. But Disney didn't really like my record, and because I had gotten into a little bit of trouble when I was younger. So I just asked him to work for free, just to learn directly from him. So I was spending that time, learning, and then having to work at, another restaurant in order to pay the bills.
What's the difference between kind of like what you guys have here versus corporate, like Marriott versus Disney? Because I feel like Disney would be like a whole different form of service.
They are so stringent on how you are to act and be, and the type of person that they bring on. I mean, it works for them, like they're doing something right. But it can make somebody else feel inadequate. Somebody who might not have quite the right personality, but has the skill, might lose that opportunity because of what their perception of that person is. But then again, Disney is all about perception. So like what it looks like, and they have a pretty tight grip on it.
Here at Midway, it's family oriented, but it's also still with that people focused. You have Marriott, which is more corporate. It's more, this is a transaction, but on a massive scale. Then you have Disney, which is, this is a transaction, but there's no you. It's just us.
Yes.
And then you got like country clubs, which is like, it's all of us, but it's also none of us. Because you have all these people who are, they're paying a lot of money for, hitting a ball across a bunch of grass. But there's also we need to keep, I don't know, how's the country clubs different from the other?
A lot of these country clubs have a certain F&B minimum. So if you don't spend that minimum on food and beverage, they automatically withdraw it from you. So that's how kind of they get their operating budget, when it comes to like labor and food, and usually the general wealth of a country club that has an F&B minimum like that is a little bit higher, so there's a higher expectation. But you'll also find that they're still kind of a meat and potatoes crowd. So they want that kind of elevated food, but still in a more comfortable.
So it's like it's food that has a fine dining feel, but is comfortable enough for them to stay in the club and
feel approachable. We started making all of our breads for our sandwiches from scratch, and it took off. People were so interested in it, and they want to know that it's not processed.
There's a human behind it.
Yeah, there's a human behind it, and it's not kind of just thrown together. There's actually some real thought behind it.
Yeah, so it's the kind of foods that you guys have is something that's fast enough to be able to make within 10 minutes, but good enough quality that someone can make it at home. So that someone can see it like, I can make that.
Right. So it's the difference between having a sous vide octopus on my menu versus a down-home Southern fried chicken. And the fried chicken has been on my menus for almost the extent of us being open. Using fresh pasta versus box pasta. It not only is it a selling point, it's something that makes them feel like they're getting something that's like that's legit and, well thought out.
What about organic foods? Is there like another step of complexity by having organic foods?
Yeah, it's also a higher price point. Some to most don't mind paying that because then there is that extra added thought of how it gets sourced and where it comes from. I'm looking to start this program for my staff where I haven't decided whether it's going to be like a whole menu cycle, which is basically, I change the menu 2 to 3 times a year, or it's going to be this chef's table dinner where I want to highlight an animal. So the idea I have is to, buy half a pig, teach my staff how to butcher it down and create, the primal cuts versus going down into those more individual cuts, and showing them how to use the animal, snout to tail.
Kind of like the American Indians back in the day when they hunted down buffalo. They didn't just hunt down the buffalo. They used the meat for one thing. They used the bones for another. They used the hide for clothing.
Exactly. And it gives them an appreciation. It gives me another avenue in educating. And my guest gets benefit out of it.
Going back to you 20, 30 years ago of how you would have been more patient, would you say you would rather be patient over being impulsive?
Sometimes you don't see what the consequences of that impulse are until it's long too late. Bridges get burned. And with the collective attitude that, a lot of, these, I don't want to say societal rejects, but
we're all societal rejects.
Like people
who want to belong to a community that's making them a better person.
Yeah,
because anyone could be a misfit. Anyone can go to prison. It's not that hard to do that.
Yeah, and when you have these rebels and they make these knee-jerk decisions sometimes because they don't like a certain way that something's happening, but not thinking about what the reasons are for that and make a knee-jerk reaction out of it can burn a bridge.
Yeah. So there's a big difference between being impulsive and making calculated risks.
And when you're young, you don't think about that.
Yeah, of course not.
No, you gotta be older and wiser before you're like, oh.
So it's almost like being impulsive is being having a raw impulse is reckless. Because I know this, obviously everyone's made a lot of mistakes, and I've made some mistakes that I really regret doing. But at the same time, it's like you can't fix the past. You can only do whatever you can in the future.
Yeah, or they become understanding enough of a person that, they can say, okay, we were young, we were stupid, something like that.
We did clarity over agreement, patience over impulse, empathy over judgment. Kind of touched on that. Flexibility over stubbornness, journey over reward.
The amazement inside of that journey is sometimes way better than the destination.
Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, kind of. So all growing up, probably all the way until I was 18, instead of flying and flying to destinations, my parents used to take me and my brother on vacations in RVs. So, and we were, super young. So my dad was a courier. We drive packages around. This is I feel like it was before UPS. But he used to own a courier company. Picking up packages from one place and dropping them in another. And so we drove a lot. His truck was his office. So with him being so comfortable in driving, he would drive me and my brother around and my mom for vacations. So we would, do you know what a KOA is? It's like, there are RV parks, all around the country. And, as a kid, when we would stop at these KOAs and, hang out for the night or the day before we would get back on the road, my brother and I would meet all of these other kids from all over the country that were doing the same thing. And, nowadays you can't do it because gas is so expensive. But meeting all of these other kids and other people from all over the country that were traveling around as well gave us this sense of culture. And we, and it a lot of times, so then, my brother and I like laying in the back of an RV and watching the road kind of go away or go behind you, and then sitting on the overhang of the RV in the front, watching the road come at you. And a lot of times those parts of the journeys were almost better than the destinations. I mean, we'd go anywhere from Disney to Yellowstone National Park, like just so many different places. It was so much fun as a kid because it gave us this sense of, give us this exploratory nature. And really it was fun because the traveling part of it actually brought my family closer together. So like I could not be more appreciative of that kind of upbringing where my dad was very family first.
Is there any cool stories that you remember from the other kids that you were talking to?
Well, I have a cool story from just my brother. He's probably not going to like me for this. So
you have to say it then.
Yeah. So it was my parents, me and my brother, my aunt, my uncle. And this is before my aunt and uncle had kids. And we were on our way out to, or no, I think we were already out in Yellowstone. And my brother used to be a sleepwalker. So he woke up in almost this night terror, thinking that there was like a bear trying to get into the RV. And it was like this whole big, he was basically freaking out, woke the whole camper up because we were all staying in one camper. And it was just chaos trying to round him up because you're not supposed to wake up somebody who's in like either a night terror or like sleepwalking. So you have to kind of like corral them into different, he was trying to get out of the RV and go running. And that was one of the funniest things I had ever experienced. And it really helps to kind of shape you as an adult, being able to, make those connections, be tolerant of other people, understand people a little bit better.
I like how you said tolerance, because a vast majority of people I do, it's not about the person. It's not about who they are. It's how much do I tolerate them.
Right. Because everybody has this level of annoyance that they have with the public in general. And you got to be completely insane to just love everyone all the time. There's got to be some sort of imbalance there.
No, I'm basically a sociopath. I've said this before. I'm basically a sociopath. I hate people, but I love the people that I know.
Yes, I have definitely been called a sociopath before then.
I don't know if it's a pure definition of sociopath, but like the vast majority of people, there's just, or the most, I mean, I don't want to use XCAL as an example, but as an example, the fitness area at XCAL, you'll like, I'm just walking by to go to jujitsu and everything. Crazy, yeah. But you'll get, like, especially in the evenings, you'll get kids, you'll get people who, in the locker rooms, there's just these, I don't know, teenagers, and they're speaking like the stupidest way. They're talking about the dumbest things, and I'm like, dude, get a life.
Yeah, but can you imagine the generation before us and thinking about the way we were talking?
Oh, well, then it was retro. That was the way to talk. And it just becomes just like, why is it normalized? It's just, I mean, yeah, sure. When you're looking back, it's nostalgic. It's like, that was the world it was.
Some of it's the upbringing. Some of it's people looking at it as, life is too hard, so I just want to coast where I'm at.
The vast majority, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying the vast majority of the kids here, especially in Loudoun County, don't have any excuse.
Yeah, my dad had me on a paper route when I was 12 years old.
But your dad was a Marine, so he had that work ethic already instilled in him.
He did his 4 years. He was, I guess, just barely too young for Vietnam. So I was kind of in this in-between era, I guess. But yeah, I mean, he took a lot of what was instilled in him then and, put it in me and my brother, which we hated at the time. It was like the worst. But then as we got older, we really saw, and this hopefully is for, most kids growing up and finally seeing like why their parents are so hard on them.
Why do you think that is? That like when we start out, we're just really resistant to doing the hard things. And then as you start to see that that's the best way to get things done.
Because as a kid, you don't want to do any of it. Like you want to just stay a kid. You want to just have fun. And some of those hard things well, a lot of those hard things are just not fun.
I mean, kind of going back to like the cost of education. When you start learning something, like just learning something new is hard to do. But once you realize that's like you start learning, you start expanding, you start getting the all this connections made in your brain. And it's like, this goes to that goes to that. And then like you get this dopamine rush of this makes sense.
My dad used to always say, it'll click. It'll just click. You know, like if you do it enough times, it'll just click. And that was something I kind of held on to because of once I did something enough and it clicked, it was like, oh, okay. So then learning more and more things and doing those things repetitively, and it was always that, okay, it clicked, and then okay, it clicked, and then okay, it clicked. And sometimes it took a little bit longer for me to get things to click than I wanted it to, or it should have.
Consistency is not just doing the most every day. It's doing a lot, 100% this day, 80% this day, 40%, 100%. You're always doing it. It's never zero. It's never 2%. There's always that maintenance of, doesn't matter what day it is, just keep doing something a little bit better. If you were looking at yourself, let's say 3 years from now, let's say everything goes to plan and you get to where you want to be. Obviously, there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be things that you didn't realize was going to happen. If you were to talk to yourself in 3 years about Midway, personally, like who you are, what would you want to tell that person?
Stay diligent, stay patient, stay as detailed as you can get, because this is technically uncharted territory for me. And even, opening up the 2 restaurants that we have here for, the family that owns XCAL, that was a huge leap for me as well. I had been part of openings before. I had been part of, kind of like the building process, but had never really been the one creating and then pointing the fingers as to, the process of getting it together. And, my bosses have been amazing at letting me kind of like navigate my way through the process. And so far it's done okay. We're not, busting at the seams or anything when it comes to like foot traffic in business. But it looks to me like it has like insane possibility, and potential, I guess is the word. So the patience part of that, in soaking up as much of the detail as I can, has been like main focus. And it's been so much information to take in that it can be overwhelming. So I think the patience part of it is the key to kind of not getting overwhelmed. And, patience kind of creates this way of compartmentalizing these tasks that can seem like they're so big that it can be like overwhelming.
What's because probably just ended on here. What's a hard truth you wish the world to just get into their skulls of how the world works in your perspective?
2 words: tolerance and understanding.
That's 3 words. And
tolerance, understanding. Like we talked about before, being able to, tolerate the differences that people have creates an understanding of how someone else can be different and yet still get along. And even if you don't get along, understanding that person does have the differences in you and allowing that person to be who they are without trying to push who you are and what your beliefs are on them because you believe that, or anyone believes that, their way is the best way, because it could be mostly true. It could be really far from the truth, but being able to understand people are people is not only something that my dad has said from day one, like people are people, they're just going to be who they are. And being able to balance the tolerance with the understanding of how people are really creates a better, not just social environment, but creates just creates better people.
Cool. Well, that's all I got.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem.